You're listening to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast.
Hello everybody, and welcome back to the Classic Gamers Guild podcast. A few weeks ago, we had a listener request from Charles Harrington for an episode regarding LGBTQ+ representation in games. We mentioned at the time that the only reason we haven't done so yet is because we just didn't find ourselves qualified to talk about it. However, we did promise to deliver this episode, and so we put out a call on Twitter, and here we are. Today, we have a special guest with us to help us tackle this topic. They're a streamer, writer, and queer rights activist. Welcome to the show, Kaiju. Thank you very much for taking the time to join us.
Thanks. I came in with a pizza. Whose is this for? I'll just put it down here.
For Paul and Anna, they're here too.
Okay, yeah, okay.
I like pizza.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Oh, our pleasure entirely. So first of all, tell us a little bit about yourself. Like, what do you do?
I am a monster of many parts. I am a writer. I am working on my own games. I grew up playing games of all sorts on computers. I am an entirely computer-based gamer from my early childhood onwards.
What was your first game?
Yeah. Tell us a little bit about your gaming history.
Give us a little bit of a mini bio, at least.
Okay, so first one I can remember playing would probably be Alley Cat.
Nice.
Back in, this would probably be like 1989, maybe 1990, back when I was about 2 or 3 years old.
Wow.
Wow. Then the next one I can remember very fondly was Mixed Up Mother Goose.
Of course,
which
yes.
I see that one quite a tie into a lot of adventure games that followed on.
Mm-hmm.
The next really noticed a lot of Commander Keen, a lot of the old Apogee games, Doom, and then I got introduced to my favorite, which was Monkey Island, The Secret of Monkey Island.
Yes.
Nice.
Nice.
And I was really, really fond of that one because that was also the first time I'd ever gone to see a CD-ROM. And this was back in the days when CD-ROMs had the little tray that came out and you opened it up and put the CD in and you put that in. And I got to play that at my dad's work because I was over there for some reason. And he had like a bunch of LucasArts games. I think he had that and Loom, both on CD. And then I just went, hey, this is a CD. We have a CD player at home. What happens if I put the CD for the game in the CD player? And you got the game soundtrack. And it was amazing. And my little heart just melted that I could listen to Monkey Island the whole time. But yeah, and
So is this in Australia?
This was in Australia.
Okay.
We usually got things about 2 to 3 years later than the States, just because Australia has always... We get kind of screwed when it comes to that sort of thing. I am very happy that we have stuff like Netflix and streaming services now, because usually we used to get things about 3 months later than anyone else.
Right.
Bare minimum.
Right.
A lot of very angry Game of Thrones fans, I gotta say. When
No spoilers. I can't go on the internet for 3 freaking years. Oh my God.
Pretty much. So there was that. But yeah, I grew up. I think I've played almost every point-and-click adventure game ever made.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And
so you're our best friend, basically.
Yeah. Then a few years ago, I started a project called the Digital Diversity Project. Was all about focusing on the creators of games who were LGBTQIA+. So not focusing so much on games that had gay themes or queer characters or anything else like that, but the people who made the games, because a lot of queer creators don't get jobs in the mainstream.
Right.
Which is one reason why representation has always been terrible. Not always terrible, but most of the time terrible.
Right.
And I've been doing that for about 3 years now and played a lot of games. But yeah, I'm very, very eclectic, very broad mix. I also do a lot of stuff about giant monsters because I'm all in on giant monsters. Because when you're queer, you tend to identify a lot with non-human stuff because, people look at monsters and go, big, scary, different from us. What do we do? And they look at queer people the exact same way.
Right.
Interesting.
Oh, God, they're coming here to destroy our way of life. And it's like, wait, are you talking to me or Godzilla?
Right. Yeah. Sadly.
So, yeah.
Something I wanted to ask you, and you kind of touched on it just there, so I might as well jump in with it, was I was, doing a little research for the episode and to speak with you, and I couldn't find any positive representation in classic games that I can recall, keyword being classic, and also keep in mind I'm really kind of only an adventure gamer, so I'm not really referencing anything outside of the genre, but just, I couldn't think of even all that many, let's say, bad ones, but I couldn't think of any positive. Have you come across maybe a short list of good representation?
Yeah, I've actually got, I kind of keep an ongoing list myself because there's a few out there. If you go into Wikipedia, there's actually a list of LGBT characters. They don't include Q or anything else like that. Right. It's got some interesting stuff in there, but it's definitely not inclusive of everything. There's also a really wonderful group called Represent Me. They are a queer charity organization that focuses on cataloging all the LGBTQIA plus representation in games. A lot of those times it's people sending in reports about, hey, this one has some queer characters in it and stuff like that. But in terms of, say, retro game representation, the earliest one we have, which is actually, the earliest one we have that's track downable, I should say. There's a couple from this group called Froggy Software from France that I just have not been able to find anything about, is called Caper and the Castro. And that is one of the first queer games ever made, ever distributed. It was from 1988. It was made in HyperCard for the Macintosh 2. Oh,
I used to have those at school. Yeah.
Yeah.
Realistic whale sounds and everything.
It is also the first example of what's called charityware, which is a game that is made for the direct purpose of raising money for charity groups. And this was made and used to raise donations for AIDS foundations in the 80s.
Right.
Because that was kind of a huge thing.
Yeah. Might have heard a little bit of that.
Yeah. The main character in that is queer. You're traveling around queer area in, God, I think it's called the Castro. I can't remember. I think it's in New York. And that was, I gave that a play relatively recently, and that is really good representation. And from 1988, that just blows my mind because most stuff after that is bad.
Right.
And that is kind of indicated by not long after that was released, a straight-washed version of it came out called, I can't remember the name of it now, but a straight-washed version of it came out, and it removed all of the queer characters and all the queer storylines and everything else like that, and just went out and disappeared. And after that, we got things. So if you're looking at the 1980s, the two most notable examples of queer characters are from the Mario series and from the Final Fight series. From the Mario series, we got Burdetta.
Right.
Who is consistently misgendered and dead-named throughout history from 1988 till today. Because, quote-unquote, Birdo, her name is Burdetta, and that is the name she wants to be known by.
Wait, I actually never knew that.
Neither.
Yeah, so this is an ongoing one that has refused to shift. And it's even included in a lot of the writing. It says Birdo, who prefers to be known as Burdetta. It's like, you mean Burdetta. You don't need to say this. As someone who is trans, you don't say dead name who wants to be known as this name. It's this name.
Yeah.
Defeats the purpose, right?
Yeah, it entirely defeats the purpose. From Final Fight, we got Poison, who is canonically transgender. But the reason that she was made to be canonically transgender was because hitting a woman is bad, but hitting a trans woman is okay, apparently.
Brutal.
Yeah, and that kind of goes on. There's a lot of slurs. A lot of the stuff that came out of Japan, unfortunately, is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Japan on the whole has a pretty negative attitude towards LGBTQIA plus stuff. And that unfortunately hasn't changed too much. Relatively recently, it's been a little better, but we still get some really bad ones. But if we're talking about things like point-and-click adventures, we still actually have some representation across the years. Some very questionable stuff as well. I had a look at the list recently, and there was one there for Rise of the Dragon, which is a weird one, kind of mystery solving game that's very strange, and its whole claim of having queer characters in it has a character that is posing as a woman character that is posing as a man posing as a woman. And I'm like, is that as good as you're gonna get? Because I don't even know where that counts.
Yeah, that's a stretch.
You've got Laura Bow, the Dagger of Amon-Ra.
Right.
Yeah, I was waiting for that one.
Yeah. There are a couple of there's a lesbian couple there having an affair, which is questionable, but it exists. There is Rex Nebula and the Cosmic Gender Bender.
Of course, yeah. It's a beautiful big box for that game, but
I want to see it not exist.
Yeah, exactly.
That's got some really questionable. Not even questionable. It's just bad.
Right.
I've just got my spreadsheet up here, and there's certain ones that I've just got bad in capital letters.
See, I've never played that one, so I'm not surprised though. Going by the timeline,
I have, but I played. Yeah, I played that. I played a lot of this stuff when I was in my early teens, and that one was That's one of those examples of games written by cis men that put a lot of trans people back in the closet. We get that with a lot of media. As soon as you start making fun of trans people, we just kind of go hide.
Right.
For example, if you go into movies, Ace Ventura put a lot of trans people back in the closet because that made a lot of trans people suddenly feel like we were disgusting.
Right.
So I was just like, no, screw that. What else we got? There's Police Quest Open Season. There was...
I didn't play that one, right?
There's some stuff in there. Orion Conspiracy. That one I haven't gotten hold of yet. I need to have a look at that one. But the main character's son in that one is gay, and you get to meet their boyfriend. And it's also the first use of the word homosexual in a video game.
Oh, really?
And that was 1995.
Wow. That took a long time. Jeez.
Yeah, somehow we went from 1988, where there was this game specifically about queer characters, to 1995, where someone actually said homosexual. I'll stop at 2000, but we've got
fair enough.
Fallout was the first game where you could have a same gender marriage, and that was 1998.
Right. Okay, yeah.
So that was an interesting one. And then we got the Longest Journey, which is loved and is amazing. And this one is actually very important because it has gay and lesbian characters who are just living their lives as normal.
Right.
No one is being seen as bad here. No one is struggling to exist. They are just living their lives. And that's something we don't see.
That's
right. Just humans.
Especially not pre-2010, like not at all. Nowadays, like it's actually out there a little bit, but definitely not then.
Even then, it's still like being queer in games is still a struggle.
Yeah. I love how Stardew Valley did it. They did it cute. I know they're more recent, but I mean, my son has been married to a same-sex, his friend in the game, and it's just you're just married to somebody and you love them and you live with them, and it's just cute and lovely.
Yeah, it's adorable. I mean, I'm not a fan of how they in the more recent updates kind of screwed over polyamorous people. It's you can't have a close relationship with another person while you're involved with someone else. You just can't do that. It's bad. It's evil. Everyone else is going to have an intervention.
They fixed that on it. Yeah, that's all fixed now. You can totally, and they don't get jealous. Yeah, and you can even do it within sight of people. That's been sorted, actually, just recently. Yeah, that was annoying.
Makes me happy. That makes me really happy. As a poly person, it's like... what? That falls very much under the, wait, you're married and you're having coffee with another person?
Exactly. What? Like, is this not okay? Come on. I agree with you there. Yeah, for sure.
Longest Journey did very well, though, because that followed on with the Dreamfall chapters, which kept that going.
Right.
So that was 14 years later, and it kept that same positivity going, which is pretty great. And then probably the one that has been most freeing for people was The Sims in 2000.
Yep.
And I've done panels in the past where I've just asked people, where was that moment in gaming that felt right for you as a queer person? And so many answers were The Sims. Because I got to create my ideal life with people that I wanted to be with. And it's like, holy crap, this is fantastic. And yeah, the amount of positivity that game came up with, it's had some kind of awkward things in terms of gender and mental health and stuff over the years, but on the whole, that one has been one of the most positive forces for queer folks in games, I think. And then we get stuff happening up for like the next 20 years, but it's all up and down.
Well, I've never played The Sims, but there's one thing, there's one game which did character creation so well. I don't understand why everyone's just not doing that right now. It's the Saints Row series.
Saints Row, was it 2 that had the absolutely incredible one? Or did it keep going?
It might be like 2 onwards or something, but I'm pretty sure they didn't let up. But I think
great.
It's been a while since I played 2. I'm pretty sure 3 and 4. Unfortunately, I don't really dabble too much. I kind of just play with a very basic kind of character. But I understand that it's just free. Just like if it's in the game, you can mix and match anything you want to, however you want to do it. And it's like, why aren't all RPGs or character creations this? It seems like you would have to go out of your way to make it not that, right?
And it really is. I've actually written articles about this sort of thing in character creation, that Saints Row is the only one so far that's done it right. And we were talking about Stardew Valley before. I can't play Stardew Valley unmodded. Because
the character creation screen,
I am non-binary, which and my identity of non-binary is not male, not female. I am to sum up my version of it, because non-binary is a very large umbrella term that covers so many different things. It would take me 3 podcasts just to get through it all. But my particular identity is a poorer gender, which is my gender is mine alone. It is how I identify it. It is how I create it. And I can't take that into Stardew Valley where it says, you're a farmer boy, you're a farmer girl. End story.
You definitely have to put in the gender neutrality mod for that one,
Yeah, someone made a very good gender neutrality mod. It doesn't take anything out of the game. It just switches. It just goes body type 1, body type 2, and it's all gender neutral. And it's like, I love this, but I can't play it on my Switch.
Oh, yeah, right.
So again, PC takes the lead on that one.
That makes me think of just a kind of maybe off the wall question, but I'm just curious as to what your preference would be. What it made me think of was how Space Quest was originally going to be an option between a guy and a girl. I think it came down to disk space, where it was just a guy only. And I'm just wondering, from your perspective, what would you prefer in this case, where, let's say, Space Quest offers you guy and girl, would you? How I'm trying to make this a little easier to understand.
Which would I prefer to pick based on my own gender identity?
Well, no, that would be super rude of me to ask. No, I mean, would you prefer to only have the option to be a male, or would you prefer, like, in other words, is it better to just make the player be, let's say, a male, as opposed to only give them male and female, and not male, female, non-binary?
It's a good question, and in the end, I think it comes down to this. Is the game you're playing and the character you're playing as a specific role? Mm-hmm. Is this Johnny Wilco? And is that the character that I am playing? If so, no problem. Because you're taking on the role of a character there. This isn't, right. I am putting my identity into a character, mm-hmm. or my views into a character. This is, I am taking over from this person in a story. Mm-hmm. It's like when you read a book. If I read Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, mm-hmm. I'm not putting myself into the story. I am reading the story as Dirk Gently, or as the characters in that. If it is just that, I have no problem. Right. It is the way it goes. And if it's a matter of I am able to put my identity into a game, mm-hmm. then I want either a range of options, mm-hmm. or I think it would be easier to make a gender neutral character, mm-hmm. to allow people to take their own approach to it. And I think that's it. Is people, a lot of developers think that making a gender neutral character is more effort than specifically gendering a character, and that's not true. It's easier to do it, specifically if you think in terms of something like voice acting. If you have a binary choice of characters, if you have a man and you have a woman as your binary choices, your voice actors have to start recording, there he is, there she is, for everything. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You've got to do 2 options every time. But if you go, there they are, you don't have that problem anymore. Mm-hmm.
Well, here's a question. In terms of representation, where is the line between representation and tokenism? Mm-hmm. Like, at what point does it become, okay, well, we're putting this character in because we want to see more, as opposed to we're putting this person in because we feel that we're just checking the box?
I think the line there is, what is the character there for? Mm-hmm. What do you as a player see of the character? Mm-hmm. So, for example, let's look at recent example, Mass Effect Andromeda. Mm-hmm. This one sparked quite a bit of backlash, understandable, because they have a trans non-playable character in that one, mm-hmm. who essentially, the moment you go up to her, goes, "Hi, I'm trans, here is my dead name." Right. She has traveled hundreds of light years across the galaxy, from one galaxy to another galaxy. Mm-hmm. And the first thing she does upon meeting the protagonist is say, "Hi, I'm trans, here's my dead name, so you know it." Right. Mm-hmm. There's similar in a Baldur's Gate expansion, wasn't there? Yes, that one was I think it was the recent expansion for one of the older Baldur's Gates, like Baldur's Gate 2 or something else. Yeah, the exact same sort of situation. Yeah. If you're wondering if your character is there for tokenism or just because they exist, look at how they react to the player. Mm-hmm. Look at how they react to their environment. Mm-hmm. If their sole reason for being in a game is to say, "Hi, I'm a queer character," then it's tokenism.
Right.
Right.
If they exist within the game and there are some signs here and there, some kind of queer identity kind of markers there, that's fine. That's because that's how you would find us in real life. In real life, you don't just go up to a person and they go, "Hi, I'm very gay. How are you?"
Right.
Well, this actually also brings up. This also brings up. Have you played the Red Strings Club?
Yes, I have, and I have opinions.
Yes. Okay.
Right, good.
I don't know if you prefer us to ask questions or if you just prefer to give us your opinions on that.
I'm fine either way. So I know the one you're talking about here. So later on in the Red Strings Club, which is a fantastic game. I love that game.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful. It's very well put together. You are given the dead name of a trans character and some very unnecessary information in the game about that character, and it serves no purpose. From a narrative point of view. I am a writer. I started off writing. Like when I was 7, I started writing my own screenplay version of Monkey Island. Like I'm that kind of and that kind of nerd. The outing of that character in Red Strings Club served no purpose other than to say, "Here's a trans character. We want you to know stuff about them that they wouldn't want you to know." And I know that that act was defended by, I think it was by a trans writer in the group. But,
in the team, yeah.
But
Not
as someone who does a lot of trans activism and queer activism as a whole, it felt unnecessary, and it felt essentially like you were outing someone who didn't want to be outed.
Right.
Like if that character never comes to you and says, "I'm trans," they just get their personal life thrown into your face.
Yeah. So and it's good to hear from you, especially on your terms, because the stance that we kind of took on that was this sort of, because we didn't really feel that we had the right to take a side, we just basically sided with the writer. So it's really good to because of the fact that they themselves were LGBT.
Yeah, at least one of the. I think 2 of the team members, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, and that's not to say there's anything wrong with them or anything invalid about their opinion, but you can't. I hate to say but
no, of course
there's not just because you're queer doesn't mean that you can't be problematic in a way that you do things.
Yeah.
Which is the same as it goes for all marginalized groups. I'm going to say that. Like,
I'll be the first one to say, do not ask my opinions of how to treat other Asian people, because I just have the way I've grown up and the way I was raised. I don't understand a lot of things that are actually offensive to people. So just it out of pure ignorance, right? Just because I don't know these things, and
exactly. And we're looking at this we're looking in the real world for an example of that. And there's that certain trans woman who is going for governor, I believe, in one of the American states, who is an entirely problematic trans person.
Right.
Who is actually feeding into anti-trans propaganda every step of the way along her campaign.
Wow.
So I guess the second part of that question regarding Red Strings Club is, from where I sit through my eyes, through my life and my experience, I actually thought it was an interesting way to do it, just because it allowed the character to be represented the way they wanted to be represented, while also kind of letting us know exactly what their story was. So I guess the question for me is, like, how would they have been able to convey that part of their story without doing what they did?
Probably. I mean, there's always ways to do it. There's always narrative ways. And I say this even as someone who writes my own queer games, is that there's ways to do things and ways to do things.
Okay.
And the way that it was done in Red Strings Club was very in your face.
I see.
It was very... It was kind of the equivalent of that character in Mass Effect who says, "Hi, I'm trans," except in this case, it wasn't even that character who gets that agency.
Right.
So the way it was done in Red Strings Club stripped the agency from that character.
Well put.
They didn't have a chance to say, "No, I don't want this information made public."
Right.
And agency is hugely important, especially for queer people, because I am perfectly happy to stand up and roar from the hills, "Hi, I'm trans, I'm non-binary, I'm queer as fuck. Feel free to beat me if needed." But I'm not saying that that's how all people should be.
Right.
I'm not saying that I want... I'm not going to go around throwing around my dead name, and if anyone finds that out, I'm going to be very upset. I still get emails coming to me in my dead name, and that's essentially what happens in Red Strings Club. It's someone who pops in and sees someone else writing down information of you really don't want them to see. Is there a way they could have done that better? Yeah, I mean, you could have talked to that character.
Yeah.
You get a chance to talk to that character in the game. So let them say it in their own way.
So basically, a quick fix would be just give that character some agency in the matter.
Yeah.
Yep.
Let that character say at some point to you, even a subtle hint. It doesn't even have to be a "Hi, I'm trans." It can just be a subtle pass as like, "Oh, that was a different me," or
Right.
I often say it was a lifetime ago, or that was a different me that thought this or said this.
Right. Do you think that perhaps, and this would just be speculation, I would imagine, on all of our parts, but do you think that the writers behind that game were maybe trying to put a personal experience into their game and maybe just didn't think about how it's going to represent the community as a whole? Because for me, I'm just trying to make sense of, how you could maybe perhaps accidentally or not, poison your own water.
No, definitely. It's how people want to tell their stories is entirely up to them.
Yeah.
If they thought that was the best way to get their story out, then that's up to them. And if that has inadvertently poisoned their waters when it comes to other trans people, then that is a side effect of their storytelling, and you get that from all kinds of storytelling.
Right.
They have a right to say it just as anybody else does to interpret it how they will.
Exactly. I am not going to say what they did was wrong. I'm going to say what they did made me have some angry feels. Because I streamed that game. I went all the way through it and I streamed it. And then I got to the end and I just sat quietly for about 3 minutes. And I'm just going...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was doing a little bit of research for this episode, I kept coming across the term queer coding. Can you tell me a little bit about what that is and what that means?
Oh, definitely. So queer coding is the narrative or visual act of displaying characteristics that are generally either stereotyped or heavily brought into the culture of queer people. So you see this a lot in especially older games, but it still happens recently, where there are visual aesthetics or the way a character talks that queer people will look at and go, "I'm feeling represented." And that happens quite a bit. It's usually used in a negative way.
I was going to say,
unfortunately. So we get this a lot with, especially a lot with older games where you had very effeminate antagonists, effeminate male antagonists, because they went queer coding. The effeminate masculine is a gay characteristic. So we are going to make our villain like that because you can identify them as evil because, you know, they lisp or they have flappy hands or something like that.
Right.
You get that a lot with the older Japanese games, unfortunately.
Oh, yeah.
That happens a lot. And there is nothing wrong with queer coding as long as it kind of follows on. So you can use... I tend to use BioWare a lot as examples for these because they have a lot of queer characters throughout their games, and some of them are done well and some of them aren't. A positive example would be, say, Sarah in Dragon Age Inquisition, who is a very strong lesbian character. You know, she's very anti-authoritarianism. She's very... screw you, I'm going to do things my own way, and it works very well for that character. And then you have, opposite that, you have Jack from Mass Effect, who is a really sad, terrible example for this, actually, because there's things like full body tattoos, shaved head, lots of leather. These are things that has been part of the queer community for decades. This is dating back to the 70s and 80s, even further, where these were kind of big elements of a visual aesthetic. You know, we're here, we're queer. And a lot of these aesthetics are very visual because it's like, we're going to be different because you've made us to be different. In Jack's instance, it was... what's called queer baiting because they introduced all of this, but they only gave you a straight romance option. So you'll see this coming up a lot, and it's part of the Make Mass Effect Legendary exclusive. Inclusive. Right, because a lot of the queer romances from the Mass Effect series were stripped out after they'd already been written, after they'd already been voice acted.
But why?
Because of pandering to the right. Because of Fox News. Because Fox News started putting out stuff about how queer characters in video games were ruining children all of this sort of stuff. And the management, and it is always the management, I am, as someone who focuses on the dev side of things, it is always the management that makes these decisions.
Right.
Told their staff to remove that content from the games.
Brutal.
So they stripped out at least a half dozen queer romance options across the board.
Wow.
And those files are still in the game, though. And modders have put those files back in the game. And with Mass Effect Legendary Edition, they've put the full romances back in the game. Oh,
good.
Yeah, baby.
Awesome.
Which is fantastic. But EA and BioWare won't even talk about it.
Ugh, yeah. No.
So there's actually there's a petition up online right now to try and get them to put it all back in because they put out this game during Pride Month and they won't talk to their queer fans, many of whom are diehard BioWare fans. Like, we on the whole, we love BioWare games because ever since, Neverwinter Nights, I think it was Neverwinter Nights before Knights of the Old Republic, wasn't it? Yeah.
I would guess yes. Just from what I recall of the engine, I think I imagine it's a little bit older.
Yeah, ever since then, it's given us queer romances that we haven't had in most games. But, so that's... Sorry, I rambled. I do that a lot.
Oh, no. That's
Please
fine.
do.
It was all very relevant.
Very interesting.
So, on the whole... queer coding, including of LGBTQIA plus aesthetics and narratives into characters. And then queer baiting is when you do that and you don't follow on by making the characters queer.
Right.
I wanted to follow up with my initial question with kind of the sort of the exact opposite. Before I'd asked, bad representation in classic games, and I'm just kind of curious as far as like modern adventure games, let's say, like Red Strings Club or any of the Wadget Eyes or just, the millions of modern classic style modern games. Are there any that have had a notable positive, representation in them? Like any that we could kind of look at and be proud of that they handled it, just on a human level, handled it well?
We actually have quite a few, surprisingly. Everything back to, say, there's a bunch dating back to about 2010, actually. So these have been going on for about the last decade or so. Mm-hmm. So you had A New Beginning.
Right.
I think that was by Daedalic. And Daedalic have actually come up with a few point-and-click adventures that have some positive representation in them. There was, as I said, the Dreamfall chapters, which was the follow-on from The Longest Journey. Mm-hmm. That had them. We had 2064 Read-Only Memories, which had some fantastic representation in it. The management side of things, again, entirely problematic, but the characters were great. We had Night in the Woods, which we had a pansexual protagonist, we had a gay couple, and we had a trans woman in that, and that was all very good. Mm-hmm. And we've had a bunch of indie games, of course, because that's kind of where the most of the voices are at the moment. The most notable being probably from the studio Up Media, I think it was, who made a very campy, very gay series of games, which included My Ex-Boyfriend, the Space Tyrant. These are some very interesting games, and I really love them. And probably my favorite from the last decade is Techno Babylon. Mm-hmm. Oh, right. From Wadget Eye Games.
Totally forgot about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Holy crap, they did so well. Their team is fantastic. But that one, you had a trans sidekick who was quite open about who they were, but not in a, hey, by the way, I'm trans, but in more of a jokingly kind of way that is more identifiable to trans senses of humor, I guess, and trans relatability. Mm-hmm. You had gay couples, you have lesbian couples, so it's like good representation. Mm-hmm. So we've definitely had it, and we've definitely had it in the adventure game field, especially the point-and-click adventure game field. Mm-hmm. I think it helps that adventure games specifically are one of the few where the mechanics aren't based around violent acts in general.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm. And the moment you start putting violent acts into your game, it starts making queer representation questionable as where is it in the game and why is it in the game?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, so like in a role-playing game, it's totally fine, but the moment you get to like a fighter game or a shooter game or something like that, you just have to go, why?
Mm-hmm. So I've been trying to think of a good way to ask this question, but it's relevant to the fact that Paul and I are making a point-and-click adventure game with Anna's help. Of course, she's a big part of it too. And there will come a part of the game where it's, it wouldn't be out of the question to come across some sort of an LGBTQ character. And if it were, and we want to be inclusive and have representation, so we would consider putting a character in, but, at the same time, like, the whole reason why we're having you as a guest on here is because we aren't necessarily the best ones to tackle this in a tasteful manner. I'm just sort of wondering, like, is this something which, which would be more important, putting in the effort for representation or just staying out of it because it's just not our place?
It's a very good question, and one that I don't think gets asked enough. So here's my view of all this. So representation is hugely important, and not everyone can speak from their own point of view, especially when it comes to representation. The best way to go ahead, if you want to be inclusive, and being inclusive is fantastic because it shows to your audience that you are welcoming them as an audience, which is fantastic, which is what you want.
Yeah.
The best way to go ahead with it is to first ask someone from that audience, is this sort of character or this sort of writing okay?
Right.
And then follow that up by letting them play it or read it or test it for themselves before it goes public, essentially.
Yeah.
So basically direct message you in about 3 months.
Yeah, that's fine. And this is the thing, like, so even for myself, and I'm writing a visual novel, Kaiju Noir, it's all about big queer giant monsters. And I've got queer representation from across the spectrum in that one. And even I have had to go to trans people in my general community, especially in the games community, and say, hey, is the way that I'm telling this story okay? Or is this the way that I'm telling this character okay?
Right.
So, and letting them try it and giving them a chance to talk about how they would feel in that position.
Yeah, and that's more than fair.
Yeah.
So very smart. Something Red Strings Club probably could have benefited from trying.
And that's the thing. It's an example of this story worked for me. Is it going to work for you, or does it make you feel bad about it?
Right.
That's
actually already come up once with our game.
Yeah, and that's the way you do it, especially if you're go to the right source to talk about that representation as well. For example, you wouldn't go to a cis gay man to talk about a trans woman character.
Right, yeah.
Just like you probably wouldn't talk to a trans man about a cis woman lesbian character. Things like that.
Yeah.
Because
right,
everyone comes from different points of view, and everyone comes from their own perspectives. And including those characters, fantastic, and I love it. If you're gonna voice the characters, please make sure you get characters from that background to do the voices. That's something we see a lot of, unfortunately, especially with trans characters. Lots of cis voice actors getting those roles, but in general, inclusivity and representation, fantastic. Just make sure you go and check with people from that community that you are trying to represent that the character is a good character.
No, that's fabulous advice, because I think representation is, as Rick said, is very important to us, as far as making sure that, everything from ethnic backgrounds to gender and things like that are included, so that, anybody playing could, just connect, like you said better than I could put it, is so they could feel welcome and feel a part of the audience, not looking, voyeuristically through sheets or something in the background. But I think my fear, and this is where I would 100% take your advice and contact you if that's okay, is I would already know, based on your advice, to not have them walk up and say, "Hi, I'm the trans character in the game." To be fair to myself, I wouldn't have done that prior to talking to you either.
It's good to hear.
But in our game, for example, there's really only 3 main characters, and the rest are not single serving, but you go throughout days, you might see one in a day. So in other words, we don't have space, let's say, for another main character. But if we come across somebody in day 4 who's trans, is a very small window to do that correctly. You know what I mean? Because we're not going to have time to necessarily establish them as as one of the main characters, or just establish them a lot in general. But we also wanted to seize the opportunity to make people feel welcome. So, I feel like that's almost the recipe for disaster, as far as accidentally just being like, hi, I'm the gay character, and, I'm represented well, and I'm super nice, and you're nice to me, so that box is checked. So I guess, that's my concern, is with a small window of opportunity, how to do it well.
And this goes back to our previous question about queer coding. Mm-hmm. So you might be better off including some visual or narrative direction there that hints towards them being queer or trans or whatever, than to outright say it. Mm-hmm. Because someone might just go, I see what you're doing there. That's good. And that's what you might get. Mm-hmm. And I'm totally happy. If anyone wants to chat, I love talking about queer games, and I keep an entire, essentially curated list on itch of these sorts of games, and there's plenty in there that are very good visual representations and story representations of how to get a trans character's identity across without saying it.
Oh, nice.
That's great.
So, like, my advice there is play games written by queer writers, because they will usually have a way to say it in a way that makes more sense than, hi, I traveled to the Andromeda Galaxy to get away from my identity. By the way, here's my old dead name.
Well, actually, why don't we take the time now, as we're sort of winding down on this episode, why don't we take the time now to go over, any plugs or promotions or shout-outs that you have? You mentioned that you're working on a few games, so, fill us in on what you've done and what you're doing.
Please.
So I'm currently working on Kaiju Noir, which is a visual novel based around the themes and tropes of old film noir movies, like Casablanca and Maltese Falcon and all that sort of stuff. But instead of humans, it's giant monsters who live in an underground city and who have to deal with a lot of the things that have come down since hiding away from humanity, because humanity's terrible. And it's a big mystery, and that's hopefully getting done by the end of the year.
Ooh, exciting.
For the release for that. Mm-hmm. I also wrote a small game / experience called They Live Here Now, which is a kind of a slice of life of a trans person who has left the Earth on a solo space mission. Cool. Because they don't want to have to deal with transphobia on Earth anymore. Mm-hmm. So they've gone to Earth and gone into space, and all they have with them is like a soft toy and a plant called Chuck the Plant. Let's see how many point and click nerds will get the reference in that one. And just kind of how they would live their life. Just being themselves, and what you would give up just to be who you are without anyone kind of trying to stop you. But outside of that, I run the Digital Diversity Project, as I talked about before, which spotlights LGBTQIA plus game developers. I've got a bunch of blogs and interviews with those devs, and I also keep a curated list of their games up on itch.
Nice. Okay.
Very nice. And I'm looking at Kaiju Noir. It looks absolutely gorgeous. I really like the emphasis on just the particular colors of each monster, like the way it pops out and gives them their own personality. That's really cool. And I just wanted to ask, what is your role in the development of the game? Are you doing like the coding and writing?
At the moment, I'm doing everything except the character art. Wow. That is a wonderful artist named Lewis is doing those, and I'm not doing the music. That is by a wonderful trans woman who lives in my city. But everything else is me. So I've been writing it and programming it and doing the backgrounds and all sorts of stuff. And since the start of it, and I'm really loving it, and I'm hoping I can get it out soon, but the main character artist has been very busy lately, so haven't had a chance to catch up with him.
And you have a Twitch you mentioned. Is that still you still keep that going?
Yeah, so I'm just NB Kaiju on Twitch. I stream relatively erratically, mostly because I've been waiting to hear back about job stuff, but I've got a new job recently, so it's just a matter of getting the when you've been unemployed for a while, you tend to lose motivation for a lot of stuff. But yeah, I'm a pretty variety streamer and hoping to get back into doing my digital diversity streams, which is essentially I just sit down with a bunch of the games by those queer devs and play through them, and usually have a lot of feels because those games tend to have a lot of feels going on.
Quick bonus round question for you. I'm just curious personally. Could you tell us some of your maybe like a top 5 of your just favorite games? Just in general, I guess I'm saying, regardless of anything, just to know you better. What are some of your favorite games?
Oh, this is a fun one. So favorite games, top one I'm unfortunately a LucasArts diehard for most of my favorites there. I'm gonna have to say, I'm probably gonna say Monkey Island LeChuck's Revenge in terms of favorite game.
Right.
Nice.
That one's tied very hard with the first one. It's hard to just define which of those two I liked more. After that, probably Sam and Max Hit the Road, just because that is fun and weird.
Talkie or no talkie?
Talkie.
Nice.
I grew up with the talkie
on that one. Yeah, that's a good one.
When I was young, we got the LucasArts Vault, like the archive.
Me too. I got archive volume number 3.
I think we got 1 and 2. We got the ones with most of the LucasArts games, and we got the one with the adventure games, and one with most of the Star Wars games.
Nice.
Right, 1 and 2.
Yeah. I remember hating Rebel Assault because of how mean it was. It was evil. Probably going to say Techno Babylon is up there as honestly one of the best point-and-click adventure games I've
such
ever
a great
played.
game.
Yeah.
That pushes that up my list.
God.
I own it. I've supported them, but
and you know what, since we do genuinely love LucasArts and Sierra, but just to throw us a little Sierra bone, what would your favorite Sierra one be?
Lost Secret of the Rainforest.
Oh, great choice.
Eco Quest 2. My problem with Sierra adventure games, and I actually talked to Ron Gilbert about this a few years ago when he was down for PAX, is that I don't like failure states in my games. Right. I don't like to be able to get to a certain point and the game could go, no, you don't get to go any further.
Yeah, fair enough.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so many Sierra games did that to you. But the EcoQuest games didn't.
That's
like
right.
You couldn't fail them. You couldn't play 3 hours into them, and then they said you didn't save the mouse when it came past being chased by the cat, so you didn't get the needle out of the haystack, so you didn't do this. Start again.
Yeah, you ate the sandwich. Yeah,
eat the sandwich. Yeah, I've honestly. I've never finished a King's Quest game. I refuse to play the Police Quest games, in general. But generally any of those. Eco Quest, I love. I grew up with it. I had it on floppy disks, and it was remains one of my favorites to this day. That's probably up there. I don't know if it is one of my top 5, but it's definitely one of my favorites.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's a really cool mention. And I will say, just for fun nerdy facts. So in Echo Quest 1, there wasn't supposed to be fail states, but it is Sierra. So they accidentally overlook something to where, I don't know if you remember, but there's a section under the water where you have to move totem poles and get a certain thing going. And apparently there's a fail state there. I can't remember the exact details, but it was just funny to me because they were trying not to have a fail state and they still did. And then on the other hand, it's also a children's game, which is really cruel to do to a child.
That's hilarious.
I never ran into that one, and I'm kind of glad I didn't. Up there in top 5 probably is Vampire Masquerade Bloodlines. Nice. That's a damn good game. And I'm probably just going to chuck this one in there just because I can. I'm going to chuck like 2016's Doom.
Yeah.
Because like, just because I feel like there should be probably a shooter on that list, and that one is just big and fun, and it's cathartic.
It is.
And sometimes you just need a cathartic game.
Yeah.
But yeah, now I'm thinking about the fail state thing. So back in 2016, Ron Gilbert was down to show off Thimbleweed Park in Australia because he was down for PAX, and I'd ended up at like the post PAX like drinks area, and I'd just taken over a table near the booth where they were showing off Thimbleweed Park, and I have my game and it's a lot of fun, and then I just sit there at the table and bring out my tablet and I start playing Secret of Monkey Island on my tablet with a bunch of friends, and Ron just kind of side-eyes me, and then he just kind of gives up showing people Thimbleweed Park, leaves that to his like co-workers and co-devs, and he just comes over and we just start chatting about Monkey Island. And like the loom joke and our shared dislike for failure states, because like I don't know, it's one of my little hills that I die on, is that when you read a book you don't get told halfway through the book that you've been reading it wrong, and that you have to go back and start again. And that's what like point and click adventures especially are storybooks. They are big stories that you get to take a part in. The moment you get told, sorry, you didn't read this bit right, so you have to start again.
I personally, just throwing my own opinion into the hat, I think if you are going to do a fail state, like I'm not 100% against it, but it should be something where it's very obvious and it's on you that it happened. Right?
Yeah, something in there needs to be the equivalent of popping up with a message to say, hey, by the way, you're not going to be able to finish the game now.
Or some sort of a warning. Like, as long as there's like warning, we're all about warning shots, right?
Yeah. So it's the equivalent how in Oblivion, if you ended up killing Vivek, Morrowind, they'd say, sorry, one of the main characters has died. You can't complete the story now.
Right.
The mouse from scene 3 has died. You cannot complete King's Quest 4? God, 5? I can't remember now.
They do blend together, but you know, the fail states, they're not acceptable in any regards. I'll lend forgiveness if they were by accident, and I think that a lot of the Sierra fail states were not intentional, but I know for almost a fact that all the Roberta Williams ones were intentional, because she's just the worst. I mean, I love her to death. I do, but dear God, like she likes an amount of punishment in her games that I could never imagine. So yeah, those are off limits. And I've gotten to the point, as much as I love Sierra games, if I don't remember the game extremely well, I'll Google the name of the game and then dead end or fail state before I play. And thank God the good people on Fandom always have the warning. So I'm like, all right, I'm not gonna get a walkthrough, but I will note the 3 things not to do or to do.
Yeah.
Like don't need to dash that much. Yeah.
I'm fine if the game has ways for you to fail, like to die. Like you've got the Indiana Jones games. There were plenty of ways for you to end up crushed under something in that. The Broken Sword games. There were plenty of ways to die in that one. But
were
they
you
never
able to die in the Broken Sword games?
Yes.
Oh,
yeah.
I never found those.
So generally by having bad interactions with the gangsters. Funny Broken Sword story, actually. So I bought it twice in my life. I bought it once from a secondhand, like, computer market when I was about 9 or 10. That was the first time I got it. And then I bought it again off eBay recently for my collection because I'd lost it in that time. And both times it had come with a printed copy of the walkthrough. So I just assume that the thing to do that it says at some point is please print out a copy of the walkthrough before you sell this game off, because it's such a weird one. It's just like of all the games I've ever owned, that's the only one that has consistently come with the previous owners had to print out the walkthrough for it. It's probably for that goat scene.
Yeah, that's right.
100% him for the goat.
Yeah, you know you're in trouble. The walkthrough falls out before anything else. What's your Twitter and Twitch?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, everything for me is just under NB Kaiju, ENBYKAIJU. That is for Twitter, Twitch, my website, all that sort of stuff. So nice and easy to find me.
Okay, great. Well, you know what? Thank you so much for joining us. I swear every single minute of this episode has just been learning for me. So that's I really appreciate you taking the time. I know some people, these days some people can be really exhausted of having to explain things to people who really should know better by now. So that I really appreciate your patience with taking the time to kind of educate us on something which we really should know better by now, and it's on us that we aren't, but we do want to learn. We are trying, and so we do really we really appreciate you helping us out here.
You're very welcome. This has been really nice, and in the end, it is the media that helps our understanding. And this is something I always say, is that if we can have positive representations of this sort of stuff in our media, in our games, we don't end up having to ask as many questions when we're older.
Right.
Yeah.
So because I never got to see a non-binary character in a game up until I was in my 30s, I didn't know about that stuff because I'd never seen it in a movie. I'd never seen it in a game. Yeah. It's only from talking to other people that I learnt about it. And that's how these things work. If we don't see our own representation, if we don't see things that help us question who we are and the world around us, we don't properly relate to it. And, if we had these sorts of characters and these sorts of themes in older games, then we'd be more likely to be open and understanding of it. Yeah. And that's what I want to see. And that's why I'm happy that you're going to put, a queer character at least in your game. And I'm happy to talk to you about it and why I think education and representation is important.
Yeah, well, and especially when you put it that way, the emphasis and the importance, it does begin more and more to feel like a bit of a responsibility, because you wouldn't want a fellow human or potential friend to be living uncomfortable and not sure why, and it's all because the media and the things that they are able to consume around them hasn't ever stopped to be like, hey, this is an option, and there's others, that understand, and so it does put quite an importance on it.
This is honestly a really big thing. It is like, so we skirted around the question being asked before is like, what do I prefer to play if I have a choice between a male character and a female character? Is that I have always preferred to play women characters in games because I was forced to play a male character for so long in my life that playing anything else is good. Like, is still better.
I actually do the same thing. If it's an RPG, I play female characters because just even as straight cis, like completely basic, I've just gotten tired of sort of like, well, we have enough of that. We could do that. I could do that anywhere else. Just there aren't enough women, so I just want to play a woman for once.
I've always played a male character, always, and even now I still do, and I've actually, I've always just wanted to play whatever character I wanted. Like, there wasn't a lot of gender for me. I didn't see it in games or in real life that much. I always wanted to play who I thought would be the coolest character, and it's just nice now that I'm starting to get some of the choices to be able to really make that decision for myself.
Yeah. And that's something that we lacked. It's something that we really lacked in older games. It's something that we're slowly getting hold of in the last 20 years, is this ability to build characters that we want to relate to or that we think are just more fun. We don't have a lot of point-and-click adventure game protagonists who weren't men.
Right.
Like, we had Laura Bow, we had
Rosella.
We didn't have a lot of protagonists there.
No.
And having choice is good. And you don't have to put every choice in every game, but having a variety of games out there that have a variety of choices is the important thing.
Yes. Well said. All right. Well, thank you very much. I guess it's about time to wrap this up. So thank you very much once again, Kaiju, for joining the show and helping us out through this. Really, it's just been an absolute blast. Those of you at home listening, please, if you'd like to join the conversation, you can find us on Facebook. We're a group and a page. We're on Twitter and Instagram at CGG Podcast. We are on Patreon if you'd like to support the show. Thank you very much to all of our supporters, particularly those in our extra special thanks tier. Those would be Una and Gus, Jean-Francois Paget, Jay Holmes, and Mark Fillion. And speaking of Mark Fillion, please go and support the Chinatown Detective Agency, his upcoming game, which listed on Steam.
I'm so looking forward to that one.
Right? It just, oh man, I can't. Everyone is
almost
at this
there,
point.
too.
It's just so good. Yeah. And if you have any questions for us, or comments or disagreements or anything like that, send us an email, mail@classicgamersguild.com. And until next time, thank you all for joining.
Don't do murder.
Yes.